Hello, welcome to Contact the Families webinar, Building Active Member Involvement. If there's a technical hitch, please do bear with us. Those of you joining by PC, laptop, tablet or smartphone should now be able to see this introduction. As there are so many attendees, it's not practical for verbal questions to be taken, therefore you will all remain muted throughout. If at any point you do have questions, please use the question icon on the GoToWebinar toolbar on your screen. This will allow you to type your question into the text box and submit this to the webinar administrator, who will then select as many relevant questions to answer as time allows. If similar questions are received, these will be condensed where possible. Further relevant questions that aren't covered in the time allowed will be answered and posted on the Contact Family website, along with the recording of this webinar, details of which will be circulated next week. There will also be handouts and the webinar itself on our website. At the end of the webinar, a short questionnaire will launch. Please take the time to complete this, as this will assist us with future online training events. So as I said earlier, this is the Building Active Member Involvement webinar. My name is Sue Mennear. I'm a family covering the South West and Berkshire, and I'm joined today by Leonie, who's from South Gloucestershire, parents and carers. In this webinar, we'll be talking about how to communicate effectively with your members, your wider membership, existing members and active members. We'll be talking about how you attract active members and what motivates people to join groups, how you nurture talent, how you identify roles to get the work done, and the behaviour of group members and what puts people off getting more actively involved. We'll be talking about some of the practicalities of running a forum and how that can impact on engagement, and how you can recognise and ideally prevent burnout. We'll also be asking some questions, giving examples of some questions you might want to take back to your committee, and some case studies and a focus on the way that South Gloucestershire Forum has prioritised recruitment. Tools and handouts will be available afterwards on the website along with the webinar to help you develop a plan to build active member involvement. So look at building active involvement as a process really, and the first building blocks I think of increasing people's involvement is to communicate really effectively with your wider membership. It's important that you have a large number of members. This helps you be recognised as an organisation that is representative of families of disabled children and young people. It helps you provide evidence that the issues that you're talking about are actually affecting a lot of families in your area. It gives you a wider pool to build active members from and help you spread the load. It also helps you get the message out to more families, professionals and organisations, and helps you to capitalise on the amazing skills and experience of parent carers. You can build on parent carers' confidence, skills and knowledge, empower them to live the lives they want and be involved in the work of the forum at a level and a pace that suits them. So some questions you might want to ask your committee and think about are, do you have to be credible as a collective voice, or do you need to reach more parent carers? Is your membership representative of your community, or do you need to target particular groups of parents or parents of children with certain disabilities or service requirements? And if so, which groups do you need to target? Is it younger parents? Is it people from particular minority ethnic groups, or parents from a specific geographical area? And then you need to think about how you can use your membership to get that message out more widely to those people. And we've got some great case studies which will be available afterwards from forums like Gloucestershire and Slough who have done this in targeted particular communities. I think this model is quite helpful in terms of working out how you can effectively communicate with your wider membership. It's called AIDA. First of all, with any communication, you need to attract people's attention. And bear in mind that we are bombarded with information these days. For example, if a forum was wanting to use a poster, parent carers would know about what they did, then just having text on it, for example, is not going to compete with everything else. Whereas a picture of a parent carer on a poster might get people's attention. Similarly, a question saying, are you a parent carer of a disabled child in such and such an area, might get people's attention. It also needs to get their interest. Often this is really mentioning an interest that you have already, or it appeals to your curiosity. And this is where it needs to ring true. It needs to not sound like you're being sold to. It needs to sound like something genuinely that you should be paying attention to. It also needs to stimulate desire, and this is really the benefit statement, is what's in it for the person reading. It might be that the benefits of a disabled child and their family, you're improving services, you want to improve services and you'd like them to help you do so. Or it might be to the reader themselves, the parent carer, are they going to gain skills, make friends, make a difference? And the last thing you need to do is to have a call to action. To ring, to email, to go to the website, to click on the Facebook like. And it's really important to repeat things. People say that it takes 3 to 5 times of seeing something, even if you are interested in it, to actually take some action. So repeat your messages. If you think about parent carers and their busy lives, you need to perhaps do this more than most. And another thing I say in terms of emailing your parent carer membership, sometimes parent carer forums just put news or something, and you can guarantee that sometimes people will look at that and sometimes they won't. And in terms of getting people's attention and making sure it's something they're interested in, say what it's about in the subject heading. So for example, if you're saying an email about transport or about health, then put that in the email. And then so it's going to get somebody's attention who is interested in that subject, who wants to help, and tell them what they can do about it. Do a survey, join you, take part in an event, whatever that might be. Another marketing principle that I think might be useful to forums to have a think is the know, like, trust principle. First of all, obviously, before you can even think about getting people actively involved, they need to know you exist. Obviously, if your forum's starting from scratch, you've got a lot of work to do in terms of promoting that you exist. But even if you have been going a long time, you still need to always be making sure you're getting out to the widest possible audience to have a representative membership. So if you don't have a community, you need to build it. And I think this is where things like Facebook are fantastic, because they're encouraging people to like what you do, to share what you do, and to get involved in what you're doing. The second thing is, do they like you? And to be honest here, it's not important that everyone likes you. If everyone likes you, your message is probably really weak. It's really important that your community really like you. Do they like what you're doing? And the last one is, do they trust you? One of the things that does happen to forums from time to time is that things go wrong and people hear things about a forum. It's really important. You've got really, because you don't know you need these until you need them. It's really important that people know what to do if any complaints or conflicts arises, so that it doesn't damage your reputation. And another thing is just to try and be really consistent about what you do. People should immediately get a sense of what you're all about and what you want them to do. And make sure you always feed back to them. It's really important that they feedback on what their contribution has achieved, so that you can ask again the difference that they've made. I thought this was useful to include this because it's an interesting idea, really, that when you're communicating with the wider membership, 80% of people are tourists. They're just exploring, seeing if there's anything in it for them. Are they interested in it? Does it make them want to get more involved? And then you've got travellers. They're people who are coming with you, who are on a discovery and having a greater connection with your organisation. And the last, which is only 5%, are the guides. They're people who've got real alignment with what you're doing and are getting involved and are taking behalf of the group. And often it's a case of starting small with people and building on that involvement, so they become a tourist, a traveller, and then a guide, an active member for your organisation. So questions you might want to ask your committee about this is, do people understand your vision and aims? Are you achieving and doing what you say you do? Do you have clear messages? Do you have a positive profile, and can you keep it that way? If any blips along the way came along, would people know what to do? Are you perceived as a transparent, democratic organisation? And are you being clear about the ways that people can get involved? And I think an example here is of some forums they describe themselves as being a strategic group of parents that are involved in improving things. And I think, well, that's all very well, but it's not encouraging people to get involved. People seeing that would say, oh, that's fantastic, there's a group of parents doing that. And they wouldn't think, that's about me, how can I get involved? So it's really about trying to find ways to engage people. And it's also about what motivates people to get involved. Talking to parent carers, you hear all of these things. Some people want to change the status quo, they want to improve things, they want to, someone to address a particular issue and then get involved in the wider work that the forum's doing. Some people are more focused on wanting to make a difference. But for other parents, it might be about learning new skills or indeed using existing skills. Many parent carers had completely different roles and had different experiences before they had disabled children, and some are still doing them. Gaining work experience is a powerful motivator, and it's a great credit to some forums that actually the throughput of active members is quite high, because those parents go on to find interesting, sometimes paid roles elsewhere. Feeling useful, having fun, even getting out of the house, meeting people, making friends, these are all really powerful motivators, and normally it's about a combination of these. So different folks have different drivers, and I think they mostly fall into these three categories. Some people want to have influence and they want to have power in a group, they want to change things, and they tend to be very driven people. And that might be, for example, a chair of a forum, or it might be someone who's heading up a particular group of a particular steering group or a group of work. Other are more people. They want to support and nurture others. They want to be people with similar interests, ideas, attitudes. There's that whole thing about the need for social interaction. And those people might be more motivated by running support groups or being involved in recruitment stands where they can talk to people, doing outreach, or indeed being on the phone when people have first joined an organisation, being on the phone to find out about why people have joined and what they can do. Chat to people. Achievement. Some people are more about, they don't want to lead on things, but they do want to join in on activities and have a personal sense of achievement. So people like that might join a focus group, or they might help organise a conference or event, or be involved in the social media of the forum, or updating the website. So questions to ask the community might be people and check in with them regularly to develop their skills and to keep them interested. Do you have roles and opportunities to suit all three of these areas? It's really important that forums nurture the talent they've got. These are hard won, these people who come forward, and you need to make sure that you keep them interested. And I think this is basically the circle of how you can keep people involved. So people come in and they feel a sense of achievement about what they've just done. The forum recognises that, the difference they've made, and appreciates it. They get real job satisfaction out of the role, and enjoy the responsibility, or are given more responsibility. And then they develop their skills, and they build on those skills, so that perhaps they take on something else with more responsibility. So you can see how that model helps you think about how you could ask people to keep getting involved in different ways, but how you need to know what the skills and interests are and how you can build on those at a pace that's right for them. So one thing that some forums have done, I've looked at all the different activities that they need to do, and to try and work out, who they've got doing those, are they enjoying them, are there different things they'd rather do, and what activities are not getting covered and need to be done, and how they can recruit people to do those activities. And I put this slide up, and it looks very, very formal, but if you broke down all the different things that a forum did, I think you'd be surprised about the different roles. Obviously, these aren't paid roles, but look how many there are. You've got people who could do membership secretary type role, who need to do the website, people who need to put out information to people, parent reps. You might have leads on different areas, health, transport. You might need an administrator. You might need someone who's in charge of PR or the newsletter, or coordinating events, or making sure the database is up to date. You really down into this many roles. But what's important The aim of the forum is not to get work done. The aim is to create a community of champions, ambassadors and leaders so that you can get the work done. Basically, you're building a community. Some other ideas then about nurturing talent that forums have told us they've tried. Being clear of roles and how they fit in, doing an induction programme, having clear information about the organisation and its expectations. We're going to hear from Leonie how she does that later. Investing in training and development, perhaps offering buddying and mentoring to new and existing active members so they can take on new roles or you can have people doing new things. Offer different roles, short-term roles, ambassadors, contacts in schools, outreach roles. Do a skills audit of your committee and work out what new people you need on that committee and what people's development needs in the committee are. Advertise for people with particular interests and particular skills. People have found it's really helpful to have away days to plan, but also to get to know their active members as individuals, spend time with them, understanding their strengths and motivations. And we also would recommend that you sometimes get outside facilitators in to help you explore new avenues and opportunities. Sometimes it's helpful to get somebody in from the outside to look at ways you could do things differently. Of course, things sometimes don't go well, and sometimes barriers to active participation arise over time, and sometimes it's about how the group is set up in the first place. So here are some potential barriers to participation. So a potential barrier might be that a forum is run by just a few people and decisions are made quickly with little input from others, or one where leaders do most of the work and put in a huge amount of voluntary hours, and people think that's the way it needs to be, or they think they would never want to do that much work, so they don't consider themselves for any of these roles. Some can lead to leaders being exhausted and burnt out, and they may become over time negative. They're too busy to involve others. And you know this is a vicious circle, isn't it? When you are in an organisation and really busy, you need help, but you're too busy to get it, so you do it yourself. And then you still need help. In fact, you need more help because you spend so much time. And that can be really, really difficult for people who are in active roles. Other things that might put people off getting involved are that meetings are boring or long, and people aren't asked how they can offer. Sometimes it's the group is expanding too rapidly and there's no time for reflection or planning or considering what resources you've actually got to do things. Sometimes it's that people don't feel they're getting anything out of the group, or they're not regularly praised for the work that they do. Some forums find that they're just free because they get so many requests coming in, it's relentless, and they're just firefighting, can only be reactive and don't have time to plan. And sometimes where things are difficult, people feel under pressure, there can be conflict. If that's not managed effectively, or you can have vocal critics. I think fear around what will happen if a leader steps back, is ill, or needs to take a break means that there hasn't been enough succession planning and that too few people are involved in taking on that really big responsibility of running a forum. So hopefully not all those would be happening in your forum, but I think it's worth flagging them up and considering if any of those things are things that are happening in your forum, thinking what could you do? What could you do to take some time out as a committee, bring people in, perhaps bring somebody in externally to have a think about how you might work to increase active participation of members. Another thing, and we've got a slide on this, encouraging participatory decision making. It's really about the way that leaders run groups and meetings makes a huge difference. So the non-verbal signals that leaders give out, the meeting place itself, and it's important to encourage people to get involved, that no single individual dominates the group. Everyone's involved in making the decisions, and that you stay on top of the discussion and keep track and draw people in to facilitate a discussion where people are being drawn in, perhaps breaking down smaller groups. And we've got lots of handouts. I don't want to go into too much detail here, but we've got handouts with lots of ideas about how you can make meetings more important, more participatory. And the aim here really is for a forum that all parent carers want to be part of. One that's engaging well with its wider membership, that's attracting people into different roles, that is looking at the motivation of skills of people coming forward and is nurturing them and getting them more involved. And I'd like to pass on now to South Gloucestershire, to Leonie Collinger from South Gloucestershire Parents and Carers, about how they've approached this, how they've approached trying to make a forum that all parent carers want to be part of.
Okay, so I'll just start by explaining our structure and how our organisation actually runs. And I'll just go back to when we decided as a forum to become a community interest company. There were lots of reasons why we decided to do that rather than a charity. One of the main reasons for us was that with a community interest company you have directors rather than trustees, and the directors can actually be the heart of the running of the company as well, which we felt as parent carers, which we all are ourselves, was really important because we wanted to keep it about what it's all about. We didn't want it to steer in the wrong direction. So that was one of the reasons, but not the only one. So we became a community interest company in 2013, and at a similar sort of time we decided that we needed to actually get an office to have an established base where we could work from, because we were spending a lot of time trying to find venues where we could all get our heads together and get work done. We couldn't keep equipment anywhere, it was all at people's houses, and it just didn't feel right, and we felt that we needed to take the next step. We found a venue where we have our office. It's only small, it's very warm and cosy, but it suits its purpose because for some of the time it's not used, and sometimes there's a lot of people there, and you wish you had a bigger one. But that's just the way it is. It fits within our budget and it serves a purpose. And the main thing is that we get so much more work done since we've had that base. And the other positive thing about it is that when you're working with other organisations or families or anything really, that you have got somewhere where they can come, so they know you are real, you do exist, and you are established and have a professional edge to it, even though we always make sure, you know, the message is that we are parent carers ourselves as well, so we do get it. But yeah, so that's the direction we went in. And then how we 6 of us are directors, 3 are non-executive, so they aren't involved in the daily running of the community interest company, and that's good because they can really challenge us, which we need that critical friend to come along and challenge what we're doing and why we're doing it. And then there's the other 3 of us who are also have main management roles, and we work on a daily basis. And those are broken up into 3 roles, and this is just how it works for us at the moment. So it's got to be that way, it's just the way it works for us. So one is the CEO, and she also is a participation manager. The other is our finance manager, and then the other person is me, and I am the development and support manager. And on this picture here, I hate to admit it, but I'm on the right, and just so you know what I look like. So my role is as development and support manager. Mainly it's how we can recruit and keep our volunteers and look after them and get the best out of everybody, and looking at creative ways of engaging parents from all different parts and everything. And another way that what I forgot to mention, is that our steering group we now use as a way of steering us in the direction. So the directors come up with all the main ideas and what needs to happen as a company and more the structured strategic side, and then the rest of us work with the steering group and we want much more ideas from them. So it's not just about us saying we're going to do this, it's about everyone's involvement, and then they help us come up with the ideas of how we can do it and steer it in the direction that we feel is right and that speaks for the voice of many parent carers. So I just forgot to mention that. And then what naturally, as part of just the way we developed, is we felt it was really quite difficult to engage parents and get them to participate. So we set up some network of support. So one is a coffee morning, which we hold once a month. And it's great because parents can come. It's very informal. Sometimes we do have people visiting and telling people about information they want to hear. So parents say, we need to hear more about travel and training, you know, something like that, for example, travel, then we'll get a travel trainer in. And so we're getting the feedback all the time and get people in, but it's very, very informal. And the main part of it is that people can come and chat to each other and support one another, and that we can signpost people. The other advantage is that we use a room which is in the same venue as our office. So we are able to pop to our office and get some leaflets if that's what a parent wants. Get a box of tissues if someone's upset. Give them a little bit more private. You know, all those kind of things, which actually works really well because we can get back to parents with things quite quickly. And we get people's views in and hear more voices that way. And the same happened with our other two groups, which has sort of become part of our organisation. And they tend to run in the daytime, so they naturally have children with additional needs and their parents come along who are preschool age. However, parents can still come if the children have gone to school, or if the children aren't at school full time. For whatever reason, they can still come on the road because it's that network of support yet again for parents, but they're also gaining something back from us. And through signposting and support and just being a listening ear, and we're able to take their concerns or positive things back. And the way we do that with all of our groups, when we're chatting to parents and issues are raised, whether they are good or bad, and I do feel it's really important that we do focus on the positives as well, because sometimes there are, and I think you know, like the local authority and other people need to know the positives, what is working well as well, not just all the negatives. What we do is we collate that information. So we ask the parents if they're happy for us to take that concern, and we do express that we don't deal with that on an individual basis, and that it is anonymous, but we do just need to know basic bits of information, the basic issue, the positive, oh, I've completely blank. The additional need of their child, whether or not it is diagnosed or not, and the age, because we then have a group of volunteers that turn that into data, which they're working on as we speak, and from that we can use that data to take, parent reps can take to the relevant meeting, and we can say, okay, here is what isn't working, here is what could be improved, here is what parent carers want, or in fact what is working, like I said before. So we use that as a great way of keeping things going. And so we developed the support networks, and then we also, along the way, looked at our branding, and we were previously called Our Voice Matters, and lots of people didn't really get what it was. It didn't really get the point across, even though we did. So we did look at changing our logo and our name, and then we became South Gloucester Parents and Carers. And on this picture you can see an example of one of our posters that we happen to have, and our circle at the bottom with the 3 people and our name. And we really wanted, we spent a lot of time going over and over it, but we think it works, we hear it does work, and we wanted to keep it up to date, fresh, and you know, eye-catching, and it does tend to work. So that's part of the branding which we did do as well, which has had a huge effect. And I want to tell you a little bit about recruitment and how we really focus on a recruitment drive to try and get more volunteers. And every year we tend to hold a conference. This year in March it happens to be one where we broke it up, so we had a couple of speakers to begin with, and then in the afternoon, at lunchtime, there was lots of stall holders, events that parent carers could mingle, gain information about different things they might need for their child, and then we had workshops which carers could choose which ones they wanted to go in to focus more on what was specific to them. And part of our conference this year, we said, look, we need to actually take some time where we use that to actually really plug ourselves as an organisation. So we decided at the very beginning of the conference to have a slot where we presented ourselves, because actually people might turn up, they don't actually know about what you do yourself as an organisation. They might know roughly, but they just think you've organised it. So we thought, no, they need to know more. And there might be people that have been before and do know it, and okay, that might be not so beneficial to them, but you're going to also get a lot of people that haven't heard about you, or capture your audience more and really draw them into becoming more interested in what you do. So we did a presentation, and amongst that we did explain who we are, what we do, gave examples, and we also explained that we are looking for new volunteers, and we gave examples of the roles that we needed to be filled, or roles that could be added to, why it would be fun to come and join us, what you would gain from it, and we came over as, you know, we wanted to show that we were really approachable. So we then said, you know, if you are interested, we have a recruitment station, and we had a recruitment station in part of the venue where our conference was being held, and next to it was a teller station, which you saw the picture of earlier on. The teller station was about people coming and telling us any issues or positives, and again we could collect the data, so it was getting that participation in wherever you can. And then the recruitment station was next to it. I was going to man both of them, didn't think we'd get an awful lot of input. I shouldn't have been so negative, and I'm not normally, but we had a lot and I couldn't do both, so I ended up doing the recruitment part, and we had at least 8 people that came forward out of 120 people. Now that might not sound very much, but actually that is a huge chunk. It's going back to what Sue referred to, was you've got the picture of the, I can't remember what the first bit was, Sue, the second bit was the traveller, and the third bit was the
guide.
The guide, and the guide is the small amount of people who might want to become more involved. And actually that is proof in the pudding, to be quite honest. That actually proves that, you know, in practice, what there is, you know, in theory into practice. So we were really chuffed with that, and what I set up before we got there was recruitment packs. And again, we kept it really modern, really zippy, nice glossy A4 folders with application form in, with benefits to becoming a volunteer, how we support you as a volunteer, and roles you might like to become interested in. And through having a chat with people, it was really interesting, because some people said, I want to help, but I don't know how, I don't know what skills I've got, I used to do this. And if you draw that out of people and look at that, their transferable skills, and really try and gain their confidence, they then realise, oh yeah, I can do that, I have got that. And they, even if they think back to 20 years ago, they've got that they can use. And from that, we then looked at what role they might want to become involved in. And then they, you know, could go away, think about it, have their pack, it's all together, take it with them, and if they want to, fill out the application form. Now, some people are daunted by the application form, and I always make it clear, don't be. It is very basic, but we do need it because volunteers and employees need to be treated equally. And from a safeguarding point of view as well, it's obviously really important to have. And probably the biggest part that people panic on is where we ask 2 references. And again, I just, you know, explain, it doesn't have to be, it's more of a character reference, so it doesn't have to be, if you haven't been employed for a number of years, don't worry about that, it can be a friend. As long as they've known you for more than 2 years, it can be a parent, your child's teacher, anybody, you know, so just somebody who knows you well as a person for at least 2 years. And it just takes that scariness away and makes them think, oh, do you know what, no, it's not that bad. because sometimes getting over that hurdle is quite a big one of getting somebody to actually apply. But what we have found is since we've had application forms, actually those people who really want to be committed for the right reasons then realise actually how serious it is, so to speak. Because you have to get the right volunteers. Volunteering's great. I can dip in and out when I want to. You can, but there is still an element of responsibility within that role, and it can be very flexible, and you can gain a lot from it. And we do look at making sure people are allowed to say, they can say no if they don't want to do something. They can give as much or different time as they want, and we go at their pace, at their level. But they need to know that there's commitment on their side too, to an extent. That's how we sort of went about the recruitment station. And yes, we did get a lot from it. And if we're looking at figures as well, if we go back to 2013, just before we came to CIC, there was 12 of us that were mainly involved. And now, in 2015, there are 59 people. 19 are relatively new. Now, that sounds like a lot, and it is a lot, and we're extremely grateful for that. When you break it down and look at the roles or the jobs that need doing, as Sue broke it down earlier and said, that was just a variety of some. To fill that up with some people that have got a little bit of time to give isn't always easy, because you haven't got 59 people that can commit full time. So that's great. We've got that, but what we do then is we do an audit, like Sue mentioned earlier, of who would fit that correctly, that little role, and how it would fit in with their life to make it as less stressful as possible and as enjoyable, because it needs to be fun, it needs to be enjoyable. People need to get so much from it, and they do if you do it in that way. Yeah, we're lucky, and it just goes to show what an impact it has all had. So we're really, really pleased with that. I think, as I mentioned earlier, we did give examples of different volunteer roles that people can get involved in, and within those are can be just general, if they don't want to commit to too much, but they want to help out as and when. We've got ambassadors, which I'll tell you a little bit more about in a minute, parent support, groups, steering group, marketing, IT, again, breaking it down almost like Sue was showing you earlier. And we also obviously try and get across the examples of the positive experiences that it has, and the fact that it is flexible hours, it can be term time only, you do make new friends, you gain a lot more confidence, lots of new skills, satisfaction and team spirit. And one major thing that most of us feel we do get from it is it really helps with our mental health and well-being, and that is because we're able to give something back. We're not just focusing on our own child or children with additional needs and our own family. We are actually turning something around and actually making a difference to the services that are out there for our children, and the support that you can give to other families. So I'd say that's the biggest thing that a lot of us find, as well as all the others that I've just mentioned and that you can see on the screen. So going back to my role, development and support manager, what we do is when, after people have applied and we've gone through references and taken them to the next stage, our interview has been done, so to speak, because the informal chat that we've had with them can be classed as the interview, because you get a lot from that, and it's not scary or off-putting for anybody. So from that, we would invite new volunteers to attend an induction training, and we do have a good half a day where we put on our induction, and it does cover a lot of areas, but we find it really useful, and the feedback we've had is invaluable, because it enables volunteers to feel part of that team right from the start. We explain the structure of us, who we all are, who to go to what for, but the main fact that my role as development and support manager is that I am their first point of contact. So they don't have to worry about If somebody's too busy, they know they are allowed, in inverted commas, to, you know, come to me, throw anything at me, and I will deal with it in whatever way is needed. And that makes them feel really secure and established. Bringing a couple of volunteers together at an induction programme also gets that level of them as a team, feeling, connecting with each other, and everyone getting to know each other. So that really helps as well. And we go through the main things that you need to go through, such as, oh, well, I've gone blank again. I'll go back to that in a minute. So we do go through lots of main things that, you know, people do need to know. Oh, claiming expenses, that was what I was trying to think of. And, you know, all sort of nitty-gritty stuff. But also within it, we do like a second part to it, and people who, the second part is more about people who are particularly interested in becoming a parent rep. So we have a good hour and a half where we really focus on parent reps. Now, some people might think they have, you know, they haven't had that in mind. They don't feel confident, they don't think it's for them, and that's absolutely fine. And at that point, they can go if they want to. But what we found is people want to stay, because from that, it's not just about parent reps. It's about what our expectations are as an organisation from everybody that works with us, and what skills you can gain and how you can increase your confidence. And we look closely at looking at skills already people already have, and really get a lot of things going. And often people then say, well, do you know what, I thought that would never be for me, but actually it might be, but in the future. Fine, in the future, we're not going to push you, we don't push you, we support, we nurture them through, take it at everybody's own pace, and if at any time they want to change their role, add to it, take time, we will work through it and tailor it for the individual, so that comes across as well. And we also like to explain to volunteers how much we do appreciate them and how we reward them. And something I set up recently is, for example, I'm going to do an event coming up for Christmas. It's a Christmas brunch for our volunteers to come along to, as a way of thanking them for and recognising the work they do for us. So that gets put on for them. It's a way also of getting everyone together. So again, maintaining that team spirit, that understanding each other, knowing each other, that friendliness, and within that, there's going to be an element of awards as well for volunteers. Now, when it comes to thanking volunteers or rewarding or awarding volunteers, I looked a lot into this, and I just literally Googled creative ways to thank volunteers for you. But basically, there are such a number of different ways, really creative ways that you can do it. And some of the main points that I found really useful was to really personalise things, take away the corporate side of things, show that you understand that person as an individual and you really appreciate that individual work that they do. And even things like acknowledging birthdays, anniversaries, how much time they put in, a particular area they might have worked really hard on, or confidence they might have gained. So real things like that, and you can bring it in as like you're doing sort of star awards and so on and so forth. I mean, the list can go on and on how you can do it, and it's really worth looking into because it's brilliant. And along with that, I've just developed a volunteer newsletter. So again, to keep the volunteers in the loop, because some might be giving less time than others and might feel easily out of that team, which they're not, but you can feel if you're on the outside, is to keep people up to date with what's going on, what they can be involved in if they want to, events that are happening, awards that are happening, fun social things, and just keeping it really upbeat and alive. So that's an area that I'm working on at the moment. Now I think I'll just mention really quickly about people who might not have very much time at all, but really want to do something. And what we've developed is the role of being ambassadors. Now, this picture on the screen right now happens to be my husband, and this is what sparked my thought process off. He basically works as a gas engineer, and he is out in the community and in people's houses all the time, just as part of his everyday work life. And from that, he used to come home to me, and still does, and say, I met a family with a child with additional needs, and I told them about your organisation and how we could help. And he is the only one in his job or his everyday life. And I thought, actually, there's lots of people that even if you're taking your child to preschool or taking your child to a club or going to church, whatever you might do, as part of your everyday life, you could be an ambassador if you want to do that. So we have ambassadors who have very good time, but part of what they are doing in their everyday life is promoting us as a group and giving that individual attention to people that might need us and could benefit from us, and then bringing things back to us as well. So that's how our ambassadors work, and that just boosts up a little bit, more of a certain area for you as well. I think the main thing I really wanted to cover now was looking at probably Facebook as well. And linking, and we do link for lots of other voluntary organisations. Well, basically, we've linked with as many people as we can out there who have a similar interest to ourselves and who can help parents and carers. And from that, we've got a good 200 links, which is a lot, because from your links you can bring in your participation element again. You can gain that feedback you need to turn into data, to have the parent carer's voices heard, to take it further, and we can do joint working together so that we can meet more people's needs. So we do that as well. And then Facebook is another way of reaching people. We have a Facebook page. It tends to be, we put information up there about things that we're doing and about things that other organisations might be doing that could be of interest to people, but we tend to really try and balance it out with other ways of just giving positive quotes for the day, inspirational thoughts, just try and keep it really upbeat, because it can have such an effect on somebody who might be having a bad day or a bad morning, and they read something, it just lifts them, because again it creates that community feel that people do know that you understand, because we're living it as well, and that we can all feel like that, but we can all help each other and help ourselves turn around as well. Tends to try and level it out so it's not really heavy, it's information giving, and it's also inspirational, inspirational thoughts as well. And talking of Facebook, which I'm nearly finished for my part now, is that we've, again, from 2013, we've really plugged Facebook and promoted it, and we've gone from 300 likes to 614 likes, and a lot of people are becoming a little bit more interactive with it as well now, and spreading the news, and it really does help, as people know, with social media. And again, from a member's point of view, it's not just through Facebook, but through pushing it with all of what I've been talking about, creating more members to sign up. From 2013, we had 241 parent carers, and now, recently, we have 500 plus the 200 other links that we have. So I think it just gives you a real picture of well, and for us to reflect and look at actually what we have achieved, because sometimes when we're working so hard, it feels like you're not really getting there. So I think that's all part of my bit for now.
Thank you, Leonie. That was absolutely fascinating. It's really brilliant to hear from a forum that's got such a positive attitude and really knows how to engage with people and encourage people to become active members. I think some of the key elements that Leonie's been talking about there are the strong leadership. I mean, they've chosen to go the KIC model, which isn't for everybody, but it has given them good governance, and it's really they've really prioritised recruitment. They've got democratic participatory decision making that you heard about, how they use their steering group, and they've got positive, clear communication, not just with potential active members, but with those who come forward, and they also invest in their active members and encourage them to develop their skills. they're really a forum that I think is exemplary, really, in the way that they nurture talent and develop active members. I think one of the things that Leonie did mention there was the idea that some people can feel burnt out, and it's really important to keep people's interest and make sure they don't do that. So I'd just like to give you a few tips really about preventing burnout. And I mean, I heard someone say this, there's no end to the ways you can overcommit yourself, and I think, you know, forums are incredibly busy. Over the last few years, there have been an incredible amount of demands put on them. Everybody wants a piece of the forum, and you know, the requests come in thick and fast. So some tips that I would give for leaders was, it's really, really important that you delegate. And people who delegate effectively don't just decentralize control to other people, they reduce their own chance of burnout. So try not to get involved in all the detail. Empower others, as the South Gloucestershire Forum have, to take responsibility and work as a team. Create plenty of support as you move forward as a group. What you're really aiming for, particularly if you set up a group, is to enable that group to become independent of you and your input over time. Take breaks. Some forums, as you know, take off summer holidays and half-term holidays and things. And I think it's really important to, but can feel a bit relentless, that there's no end to the programme of work. And unlike people who are sometimes often paid people who have built-in holidays, that sometimes doesn't happen for volunteers. And volunteers can easily feel exhausted and burnt out and not have that time to reflect on what they want to do and what they're getting out of it, and not that time to get other people to take on roles that we mentioned earlier. Have fun. If you're not enjoying your role, ask yourself why. Remember to create room for yourselves and for others for rest and relaxation, and make sure you celebrate your achievements rather than always moving on to the next thing. And I think for some that's a capacity issue. You know, you need to be able to say no. So planning and prioritizing, really important. You cannot do everything. Things will keep coming in. What you need to do is take time out as a team to review the way you do things, take stock, look for others and involving others that you do, and to learn to say no to some things. In terms of other active members, not just leaders, the questions with your committee are you making sure active members are in roles that suit them and that reward them? People who are burnt out tend to think people are doing too many different roles and perhaps things that they don't enjoy. Do you have the skills to supervise and support active members? And so I think the example that Leonie gave of having a dedicated person that you can go to, who's listening to you, who's finding out you're okay and developing, is really important. Do active members understand their roles and know who to go to for support? Do they feel appreciated and see how their work is contributing to the mission of the group? Are people feeling overburdened? Do you check in to make sure how people are doing? Some ideas we've heard from forums about increasing capacity, and as I say, there's lots and lots of examples of this on the website, and we'll be putting links on a handout. So do encourage you to look at some detail of what forums have done. There's some things that people have done have been to engage a worker, often a freelance person, particularly if you're your trustees and your volunteers, you might want to manage somebody but you need them to be self-employed. To do membership or development or admin. Renting an office, Leonie mentioned that. I can think of another forum that was very events focused. They really had a fantastic visibility in the community, but they did lots and lots of events, and the chair and steering groups ended up doing all of it because it was all in her house. So as soon as they got an office and were able to give keys to people, they got way more people involved and trained them up to do these events and be ambassadors out in the community. Doing an audit of the committee of activities that you need to do and the skills you've got and the ones you need to recruit to is a really good way of increasing capacity. Some people use AGMs to recruit trustees. You can also find out who you didn't get at the AGM, who you need to recruit to. Facebook, we've talked about. Some forums have used very creative ways of using Facebook, perhaps having a Facebook page that's information about the organisation, increasing profile, but then a closed one, which is about having conversations and getting people to involve themselves and to tell others and share information with other people in their communities. Newsletters, you can use newsletters also to advertise roles and opportunities. Developing new roles, so I think we've talked about simple job descriptions so people can see. Leonie's really covered that. Opening up opportunities to be a parent rep beyond the committee. And I think often people think that you have to be a parent rep, you have to be on the committee, and forums have showed that that doesn't actually have to be the case. Break down work into work streams. Some forums have found that they get 1 or 2 from the steering group and they get others from the wider membership, and again that helps spread the load. Look at different structures. South Gloucestershire Parents and Carers are a kick with director roles. Other structures are having unpaid trustees, perhaps with paid workers, to try and take some of that responsibility of the coordinating of the organisation or the admin off that committee. Rewards and remuneration of active members. It's very strong motivated to be rewarded for the work you do, and again on our website there's lots of good practices around that, and volunteer agreements, etc. Taking out time to plan and prioritise, sometimes saying no, as we mentioned. That's for your committee. Do you structure your meetings so exciting and so you get others have a chance to participate? Do people feel part of the team? Do you organise social events for active members? Do you thank people? Do you highlight the difference made? Do you pay expenses promptly? Do you remunerate volunteers? Do you regularly check in on how people are and who wants to expand their skills, who's motivated, and also those who may be planning to leave? So I'm just going to talk briefly about this, about making a communications plan. Remember that recruitment is for all forum members. It's all your responsibility, but it won't happen if you don't plan it. And I think this is a useful model to use to think about how to plan your communications. And again, we will have a handout on the website afterwards. So, for example, you might have an analysis. For example, you might need a new treasurer. Your treasurer is about to leave, so that is your analysis. You need a new treasurer. How are you going to do it? So, how would you look at the key messages? Who are you going to communicate? It might be that you're going to communicate with your existing membership to try and get that treasurer. And you might say, you know, we're going to use existing tools and activities, newsletters, etc., to get that out. It's not going to cost us much to do that. We do it anyway, and we need them. We'd ideally like them to have a bit of a handover period. It might be at the end of that you don't find a treasurer, and in fact someone on the committee is interested in becoming a treasurer, but they don't feel very confident. So you could then go back to that and say, well, you know, if we offered you training, would you be able to do it? If we recruited a bookkeeper to support you, would you be able to do it? Or, for example, you might be wanting to recruit parents of children with health problems. I think there's a fantastic example from Hammersmith and Fulham where they've done this. And again, you might be looking at your existing members, you might be looking at specific condition groups out there as a second audience, you might be looking at professionals working with parent carers there. So it's really just a way, I won't talk about it in detail because we're running out of time. It's really just a way, messages you need to get out to that particular audience you're trying to target. Are you getting attention? Are you doing AIDA? Are you making them interested and telling them what they're going to get out of it and asking them to do something about it, whether it's to go to an event, fill in a survey, or answer the email, and to look at what resources you've got to do it and when you need to do it. And if it didn't work, how can you tweak it to make it work? So as I say, that's a tool that you can use with your committee to look at targeting different people. And once you've got them, you need to be able to support them. So, for example, the examples I gave earlier, you know, how are you going to support volunteers who are helping with the conference on a short-term basis? How are you going to support your new treasurer? How are you going to support parents who are going to take part in a school transport? Well, you know, look at the progress you're making, look what needs to be in place, look what's not needed for now. And again, we've got handouts about doing audits of healthy organisations that might be helpful to you. And I mentioned earlier that things can go wrong sometimes. Remember that we've got on our website, obviously you need to adapt those to your own needs. It's really important that you've got those in place because things do sometimes go wrong, and it's really important that you keep a good reputation, that you manage to deal with those effectively. And in fact, as one of the other webinars about conflict shows, that conflict's not always a bad thing. You know, you sometimes need to have those discussions and challenges to the way you're doing things in order to move forward as a team. So in terms of support for forums, I would remind you that of your regional groups, you know, build in time to talk about your successes, what's worked into your regional groups. Other forums are a great source of inspiration, as you've heard today, about how to increase active membership. And we've got a list of all the forums on our website and their contact details. The National Network also has a closed Facebook page, and people find it really useful to post questions on there and get ideas. It's a really fantastic source of information and support. Also, ask your regional advisor, particularly if you're struggling and you need some support with capacity or ideas for engaging more active volunteers. And the DFE grant isn't just a participation activity, it's there to strengthen your forum and to help you plan strategically. So do, think about whether you need to vary your grant and spend some more money on perhaps a facilitator or to do a particular piece of work on engagement. Contact Family's got recommended associates and trainers list that you can use, but it might be that you can find support locally. Leonie mentioned that she used the CVS in terms of helping with the branding and promotion. There's lots of voluntary umbrella organisations to support community organisations. And our website's a rich source of information. There's a resources page, there are other webinars, there have got planned webinars in reaching seldom heard communities and in running a committee that are relevant to this. We've got lots and lots of good practice examples of forums that have managed to increase active members, and also there is the guide to running a forum, which is basically a how-to guide on how to run a forum. And in the joint bulletin too that we do with the National Network, we're putting good practice examples, so I would encourage you, share with your regional groups, but also share with us so that we can celebrate your successes and share them through that bulletin with other people. This is just a list that you can look at later. These are examples of the resources that we've got. Lots of case studies, either films or written case studies about ways that Hammersmith and Fulham have engaged parents of children with health needs, how Oldham have defined roles in a similar way to South Gloucestershire to increase capacity. Forums that have looked at harder to reach communities. Example from Sunderland about how they got volunteers involved in a pop-up shop in a local supermarket, shopping centre rather. How Cornwall built themselves up from scratch in their committee, how they managed to do that, and also information from Cornwall and Lancashire about how they've used Facebook. So I do encourage you to look at some of those and get inspired. And I'd just like to say, there's a couple of quotes here taking inspiration from South Gloucestershire, who are always sending out lovely quotes and thoughts to their parents and making them feel good. A snowflake's a fragile creation, but look what they can do when they stick together. And also from Henry Ford, coming together is a beginning, keeping together is progress, working together is success. And I know that forums are working together really well, and I hope this has given you some ideas about how you can work even better. And lastly, just to say, have fun. People rarely succeed unless they have fun in what they're doing, and it's really important that we don't lose sight of that. Forums are doing an enormous amount of fantastic work to have fun doing it, and we want to be here to support you to do that. If there are any questions now, we will be able to take a few. We haven't got much time. Leonie, do you want to read those out?
Okay. The question here is, what can forums do to provide regular support and development to volunteers, and how do you decide who is responsible for that if everyone else is also an unpaid volunteer? Right, okay, so that's a really, really good question. From speaking from ourselves as an organisation, I'll take the first part of the question. What can forums do to provide regular support and development to volunteers? Well, sort of like what I was mentioning earlier about having a role, somebody taking on that role, if that's what they're interested in, and really looking at ways to develop. Can you think of anything?
No, I agree. I'm thinking I'll take the second one, Leonie, if that's okay. Because I think that's something that you did, regular support and developing volunteers is something that you do all the time.
Yeah.
So if you just carry on.
Sorry.
One, yeah.
Yeah. So you know, just breaking it down really, like I was trying to explain earlier of how you're going to support them, what works for them, asking them what they would like, developing that real team spirit, keeping them up to date in communication, all sort of main aspects of keeping people on board and feeling supported and nurtured and up to date, and you know, offers of opportunity and things like that.
Yeah.
And then
if I just answer the second one, so how do you decide who's responsible for doing all of that if everyone else is also an unpaid volunteer? Well, I think it's an interesting question, and I mean, for some organisations that aren't KICs, who haven't got a role like Leonie's, that is about specifically doing that, it is more challenging, and it's also more challenging in terms of capacity. So if you're running on more of a charitable model, then in theory your trustees are all unpaid, and it can become sometimes be a bit challenging to manage somebody who is paid. But many firms have done that, and I think as long as you've got really strong governance and that it is the whole board making decisions about, you know, what that person's going to do, for example, or and how they're going to be supported, and that they are being led by the parents. I think that's one potential way of doing it, is giving the responsibility to someone else, and that can be a paid person or it can be an unpaid person. In terms of you know, if you're all doing it, again, I think it's about breaking it down. You know, which volunteers is, you know, if you're just a committee and it's only you doing it, then you need to decide who does what. So it's a case of being really clear about what are the bits that you like. You know, is it that you like to get people at the first point of entry, getting them all enthused about what you can do, and tell them all about all the groups you sit on and the fantastic work you've done? Or is it more that you like the social side of it? You know, you like, you know, making sure that, you know, you're investing in them, and that people are feeling rewarded, and that you're having lots of social events and opportunities for people to share. You know, there's lots of different roles, I think, to break down within just supporting those volunteers. So yeah, I appreciate that lots of committees are voluntary. Also, I'd encourage you to go to the rewards and recognition page, because there are ways that you can you know, support and reimburse people for doing voluntary roles. It's just you have to be you know, careful about how you do that to make sure that those roles are voluntary and that you're not actually creating a work role.
Yeah, I think, yeah, picking up on that, Sue. Yeah, that's exactly how we did it, because up until recently, I have been, my role, as I explained, I have been doing that completely voluntary, as have all of us who are managers, and we've only just been able to find a small amount of money that we've scraped together, able to pay us. It is a very small amount, but it's a start. And then from that, we can then, what we're aiming to do is then use that as evidence for future grants as to how we've developed that role and how we've been able to develop it further by paying somebody, but they need to be paid more so that they're sustainable, because what they get out of that role keeps the organisation going. So it's that sort of vicious circle, which is really important, because you can't sustain anything you know, if you haven't got things in place. So that's how we've developed, and then our next step would be to hopefully get a grant or bigger grants and take real pots of money so that we can pay off the main three of us in particular a more sort of reasonable amount. And then, as Sue was saying, if you can't do that, you can do it in ways of breaking down what that role could be. So rather than one person like myself having that role, break it down into the different roles within that you can remunerate somebody in the ways that you obviously, you've got to be careful about how you do it, but if you do it the correct way and find out how to do it, then it's all above board, and you're rewarding them. You're not paying them, but they can. I mean, it's a big topic, isn't it?
It is a big topic.
I don't want to get caught up in that, but I want to say that there are other ways you can do it, so that they're not always unpaid. Yeah. In a way. And then there's another question.
There's another question come in. The work you're doing sounds amazing. Do you? I think they're talking to Leonie here. Do you have any other financial support apart from the grant?
Not massively. No. Our main grant is the DFE grant. And obviously that can't cover everything. We do have other small grants that we've been able to take small parts of money from legitimately for covering what parts we're doing. And
you don't have any significant funding, do you?
No, we don't, which we need to work on, and other areas we do need to work on of getting some grants so that we can do that, because you cannot keep doing the amount of work you do for absolutely nothing. You know, there needs to be an element of paid and non-paid staff, as in any sort of bigger organisational charity. That is how you remain sustainable, to go back to sustainability again.
So basically, the South Gloucestershire is finding different pots of money to support the work that they do, and is in fact doing some fundraising. I was talking to a forum the other day that had got a pot of money from a carers grant about supporting carers, and they were using that to actually invest in supporting their volunteer workforce, really, and to make sure they were okay, and to have a strategy day, etc. And they'd also got some money from Awards for All to run activities, etc. I mean, some forums are lucky to get additional funding from their local authority. As I say, South Gloucestershire is not one of them, but you know, I'd say in terms of asking local authorities for support, something we often hear from local authorities is, you know, oh, we get the same people all the time. You know, this is about, you know, being really representative body, having lots of people involved in your organisation, and I think that's quite attractive to local authorities to say, this is what we're going to use your funding for, in addition to the DFE grant, is to make sure that we've got lots of people to represent the forum, and we're reaching as wide a community as possible. So I'd suggest for people in forums that don't get local authority funding, that might be a good approach.
Yeah.
I think that might be all the questions that we've got. Unless anybody has any others, I'll let people go back to their days. Have we any more questions? No. Well, that's brilliant. As I say, I'm really looking forward to hearing some more success stories and things. Thank you very much for attending this webinar today. There'll be a short questionnaire we'll launch at the end of this webinar. Please do take time to complete this, as it will help us to plan future online training events, including other topics you'd like to see us cover in this webinar format. The recording of this webinar, the presentation and the questions will be on the resources page of our website next week, and an email confirming this will be sent to you once that's available. So from me and Leonie, thank you very much.